In today's business and financial news, let's discuss DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This topic is trending for a number of reasons, specifically some major changes that the new administration is making concerning DEI. Usually we have lots to say during our videos, lots of perspective to present, but this video is going to be a little bit different. We're going to let you all do the talking. By the way, if you enjoy our content, please subscribe. We're just a lone YouTube channel inching our way to 1,000 subscribers, and we're getting pretty close. So please subscribe because we need you. And while we're talking about that, we do want to thank you for listening through our last video. We tried something new with the voiceover and us on the screen. It's our first time doing that, and the audio wasn't perfect, but you all were true champs and still listened and watched the video. We really appreciate it. So for this video, less of us, more of you.
Let me try to explain DEI for people who don't understand DEI, who don't like it. So to them, they think that all DEI means is that there's an unqualified woman or an unqualified person of color who's given a job or promotion and they don't deserve it. When in actuality, all that says is that instead of doing word of mouth recruitment, instead of just hiring the usual suspects, we're going to look beyond and find qualified, talented people outside the usual suspects. That's all that means. So the people they hire are qualified. It's kind of like as if you went into a town and you never got the contract because you were new to the town. And then one day they say, you know what, let's let people who aren't new to the town have opportunities. And you finally get your big shot. And you know your quality of work is better than the people who are in the town who always get the bids. And because they decide to look beyond the usual suspects, you get a bid. That's all DI is. It doesn't mean you're not qualified. It just means someone opened up the door to give you an opportunity, a chance. That's all it is. Get it?
DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that the president has railed against. He signed an executive order over the night that has a real impact there.
It sure does. And it's starting today, Savannah, 5 o'clock Eastern, close of business today. That is when workers in those offices will be told that they are on basically immediate paid leave. Contracts are going to be terminated. Trainings are supposed to end. The social media accounts, the web pages are getting pulled down as well. The White House also wants to know whether there's an attempt to, in their words, use coded language to try to disguise some of these programs. This is something that the president talked about on the campaign trail, and it is a big reversal of a Biden-era push. Keep in mind that conservatives have long been critical of these DEI programs, not just in the federal government, but think about the private sector, too, in those private corporations. The White House press secretary, in a statement overnight, says this is all. You talk about, Savannah, promises made, promises kept. She says that this is part of a pledge by the president to return America to, in her words, a merit-based society where people are hired based on their skills and not the color of their skin.
President Donald Trump says he's going back to a merit-based system. Going back to where? When was it ever merit-based in America? And you know where they're starting? With diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is January 22nd, folks, and today, federal DEI offices are closing down. Those employees are being put on paid leave, all saying they're going back to a system of merit. But when exactly was that? Was it before the Civil Rights Act, when you had only essentially white men competing for top jobs at top corporations, African Americans locked out of many educational opportunities, many colleges, many positions, women as well? Was it the 70s or the 80s when white women benefited from affirmative action? So you tell me, when was merit the system in America?
I worked at companies like Spotify, Uber, and Google, and one thing I will say is that being a DEI hire is not a good thing. Let's get into it. Now, just to back it up a little bit, I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from one of the top universities in America. I was more than qualified for my jobs. I went from engineering to marketing, and yes, that might be a big change, but honestly, my manager and my team gave me a lot of resources, a lot of books, a lot of knowledge to onboard myself so that way I can learn about marketing. And honestly, a lot of things that you do on the job can be taught. Like, most employers are not expecting you to know everything. But now let's get back to why being a DEI hire is not necessarily a good thing. Whenever there's layoffs, I don't know what it is. I've worked at many companies and I've seen several rounds of layoffs, but they always target the people of color and especially the women. I'm just like, who is planning this? Like, why is it like very specific to us? And it's heartbreaking because I honestly thought the best coworkers and the best people to work with were my female and my people of color coworkers. But one thing you do have to remember about corporate America is it's run by white men who are always going to prioritize white men. They're always going to give promotions to these white men because the top is white, and people generally at the top like to hire people who are similar to them, either in looks or even sometimes like, you know, who they play golf with on the weekends. So all I can say is life is unfair. It's hard enough being a person of color in 2024. And I feel like more corporations just kind of make it a little more difficult, especially the big ones, like the ones with like, you know, over 100K employees. Like those are really tough because you don't really have like a close bond with everyone. You honestly are just a number.
Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan resisting the urge or the push to roll back the DEI programs that they have for their companies is something that I'm so impressed by, because I hope a lot of these other financial institutions, they take note and follow their lead, because a lot of you guys don't realize that this just literally you signed your kid's life away. A lot of your kids won't even get hired by some of these companies because they have now eliminated DEI. I worked at Morgan Stanley for 11 years, and towards the very end of me being there, my manager at the time said I needed to do a little bit more outside of my day-to-day in order to get to the next level. And she voluntold me and said, you need to also join the recruiting team, the campus recruiting initiative. That is not my day job. I was just like, okay, I'll volunteer and do it for a few hours. However, she wanted me to be the DEI, the diversity lead. And I was like, okay, the school that I was assigned to was Fordham. It's an HR team specifically managing campus recruiting. However, that team is filled with a lot of white women. And I was just like, okay, well, how are we kind of reaching out to the diverse candidates at these schools? And they're like, oh, we kind of go through some of these organizations. And she gave me the fraternities and the sororities. The fraternities and the sororities were predominantly white. I'm not familiar with those fraternities and sororities because that's not my background. That's not my pedigree. So I'm like, okay, what other organizations? She's like, oh, there's some professional or some academia organizations. And I'm like, once again, these are predominantly white ones. So where are we getting the diversity candidates from? And that's when I was like, okay, well, I know of NABA. My background is tax, accounting. I was like, National Association of Black Accountants. You'll be able to find some of them there, the diverse talents as well. I also know a few sororities and fraternities. I was like, we will get a combination of all the Latin, Caribbean, the African American, all the different organizations at Fordham, and get the email addresses for their presidents, email their presidents so that those students with a 4.0 GPA can come to our events. Also, Fordham is I think it's like a high commuter school. The HR rep, once again, she didn't go to a commuter school. She went to, a PWI, and she lived on campus her entire life. So she didn't understand that, okay, it's a commuter school. A lot of these kids are probably commuting home or to work after school. They don't have time to stay after school in order to attend these events that we're planning if we want the diverse hires. So maybe we need to facilitate some of the events in the middle of the day. Me being the diversity lead, that is a diversity thought that I was able to add as value. And companies want that because the diversity of thought is what allows us all to get around the table. Everyone starting with a 4.0 GPA. However, our lifestyles are different. Some of them don't have the luxury of living on campus. Some of them go home and they have to monitor or babysit their younger siblings. Some of them have a second job or multiple jobs that's allowing them to get an education. So the diversity of thought, the DEI initiative, is also aligned with being able to think like a diversity student, and how do we get them? There was only 2 to 3 Black women in my accounting classes. I was in the Smeal College of Business School. There's a handful of Black students in there. So how are your babies going to get hired? How are your babies going to get hired? Because if you eliminate that program, you're going to have a HR team that's just going to say, okay, I'm going to go to where this fraternity or this sorority or this particular organization is held. That's predominantly white. Even at Fordham, I went to Fordham for recruiting, and I'm like, okay, the majority of the kids that we're recruiting, majority of them are Asian men. So from a finance standpoint, If we continue like this, 95% of our candidates are going to be Asian men. How are we going to get the women in there? How are we going to get the non-Asian women in there? How are we going to get the non-Asian men in there? Like, you guys will literally like vote against your own. I just don't get it. And keep in mind, our counterparts, our white counterparts, more than likely, their father or their mother already worked at JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. So they know when these schools are going to be visited by these companies, because their mommy and daddy is going to be like, oh, baby, the schools are coming, so make sure you're there. And they're going to be there because I just emailed such and such from HR, and she knows about you. I'm going to send your resume, but I want you to wait. Our kids don't even have that. When I speak sometime online, a lot of these kids, they don't even know. They do not know some of these companies. Some of these companies where they could be getting $100,000 in a bonus. Like, come on, man.
If you hold a title with DEI in it, diversity, equity, and inclusion, your days are numbered. You have a target on your back. Dust that resume off now. In case you haven't noticed, some companies are quietly trimming their DEI teams, and other companies are loud with it. According to the Washington Post, the following big corporations have been loud with dismantling their DEI teams: Zoom, Snapchat, Meta, Tesla, DoorDash, Lyft, Home Depot, Wayfair, and X, which used to be Twitter. Somehow, diversity, equity, and inclusion has become weaponized and associated with being woke. Corporate America is now pulling back on their DEI efforts because they feel like it's an increased legal risk for the business, as well as political animosity coming their way. And you know the shareholders can't have that. Additionally, according to the Chronicle of Higher Education, state legislators have introduced 65 anti-DEI bills since 2023. So if you were or are a star performer with great performance reviews, but all of a sudden things are happening, it's not an accident. You're probably in the process of being managed out or will be managed out fairly soon. I talked about the signs in my other videos, but I'll mention them briefly here again. 1, you will experience increased micromanagement. 2, you will start to see more verbal warnings and coaching. You're going to be loaded up with projects with impossible deadlines. When you don't meet your deliverables, because the projects are given impossible deadlines, then you're going to be written up. You're going to be given a written warning. Basically, they're going to start taking you through that 4-step process. 3, it's no surprise that you didn't meet your deliverables. You've said something, but now you have an attitude and, your conduct is off-putting and unbecoming and, everything else. Then you're going to go on the PIP. While on the PIP, you're going to be loaded up with more projects, with more impossible deadlines, and you haven't finished the other ones, and then another coaching, and that's going to be documented, and we're so sorry, we tried to work with you, but it's just not working out. You used to be a star, and we unfortunately they're going to have to sever the relationship. They may offer a severance package, but I don't know, it just depends. But there is an effort to get rid of this DEI, and that's how they're going to do it. Of course, they don't want to be sued, so this is why they're going to do it this way. Now, is it all corporations? No. But is it most of them? Yes. Now, is it all corporations? No. But is it most of them? Yes.
Walmart is definitely not a surprise, but Target, I will say I am shocked by this. Let me not say shocked, because big business is going to do what big business does, and what that usually means is making the wrong decision and spitting in the faces of their supporting customers. Target is the latest retailer to scale back on their DEI policies and taking it a step further to end a program that focused on them carrying more products from more Black-owned and minority-owned businesses. With this move, Target will shamelessly join the ranks of other companies that have done this, including Walmart, Meta, aka Land of the Soulless, and McDonald's, who but we're not loving it. How exactly do those burgers not break down outdoors after 55 years? Now, the irony of this DEI rollback is that many people automatically assume that that's just going to affect Black people and other minorities. But what we have seen And time again is that when DEI initiatives are rolled back, the people who don't look like this, who usually benefit more from those programs, are the ones who get hurt in the long term. Get ready to F around and find out, because it's coming. You guys can definitely let me know how you feel about Target's rollback in the comments, but let me highlight this. While Target has shamelessly rolled back their initiative, Costco and their shareholders unanimously decided to keep their DEI initiatives exactly where they are. Money talks, people. Let your dollars speak for you.
If DEI stands for didn't earn it, shouldn't that be applied to people who have multi-generational families that are full of wealth because of the fact that they own slaves and that wealth came from the intentional discrimination and denigration of a group of people? Wouldn't that be didn't earn it?
Okay, we are cooked. Yeah, we are absolutely cooked.
I'm absolutely not a fan of DEI movement, and I really hate saying that because I have friends and people who are close to me who work in the space. I'm a fan for their jobs, I'm a fan for their careers, but actually, as a woman of color, I don't care if every company takes away all of its DEI procedures and protocols. And for those of you who will want to come at me and say, but you are a Black woman, it has not been to benefit Black people as a whole in a very long time. If you look to see who these DEI rules and laws and procedures have actually helped, you're going to be surprised at what the data shows. And it's not Black people. Black people just like to fight for every movement because everything has something to do with them. And maybe it started that way, but it has been hijacked, and it's been hijacked for a very long time.
For a lot of conservatives, they believe DEI just means Black people getting jobs. And so when they see a Black person in any job, they say, oh, that person's a DEI hire. They said it about the literal elected vice president of the United States.
Absolutely.
She wasn't hired. She was hired by the American people. 80 million Americans voted for her, but they can't see through her race and gender. So it isn't just about hiring Black people and women, right? It's about disabled veterans being accommodated. Veterans returning from wars are also under DEI.
Absolutely. And I see that as a veteran myself, right? Mm-hmm. I see this initiative as a direct impact and attack on veterans. Of the 2.2 million federal workers, 642,000 of those are veterans. And so this is, in my way of viewing this, is a direct attack against veterans as well. The misunderstanding of what DEI really is, it's on us to really educate the public as to what it really is all about.
Veterans are DEI hires. Let me explain. So DEI wants us to diversify our workforce, right? They want us to provide equitable treatment for marginalized groups, and it wants to be an inclusive workplace. Most of the veterans that I've ever worked for or with, including myself when I came out of the military, sure, I was qualified for the job, pretty well qualified, but I was in no way more qualified than the individuals that I beat out for that job. The job I took gave me preferential treatment for being a veteran. The job I took passed over people who had 10, 20 years more experience than me because I was a veteran. And this happens all over the country. See, veterans are all DEI hires, especially if they go work in any government role. Every state offers veterans preferential treatment, every city, every county, and the federal government. And multiple, if not the majority, of private businesses offers preferential hiring for veterans. Veterans are the epitome of a DEI hire. They get preferential treatments, they get extra points, they get whatever just for being a veteran. So if you're a veteran and you're against a DEI hire and you work for a government or you work in a private industry that supports veterans, you are a DEI hire.
You can't say think different and do the same that everybody else does and expect different. You really have to live that life.
I spoke with will.i.am here in Davos, who warned against pulling back DEI in the age of AI.
DEI, we got to think a little deeper on that. If we are living in and moving into a world where we have agents and companies are replacing humans for, smart AIs, then we're going to be crying that we didn't have DEI in the future. We got to really think about, is DEI something that we want to remove from the workplace when the workplace is not only going to be humans in the near future?
He also said that without diversity, we may be holding ourselves back.
Let's say I want to make a song that's successful all over the world. I want a song that's successful in India at the same time as Japan and Brazil. I'm going to have to collaborate with different disciplines of music, different disciplines of thought. That's why that diversity leads to innovation. You're doing it to diversify the workplace. Even if the workplace is being creative, the more diversity I have when I'm collaborating and creating, the more unique what I make is going to be.
So this will probably be my last post about anything political because y'all are just so fucking ignorant. But I wanted to give you an example of a DE&I program since he wants to roll that back and the Equal Employment Opportunity Act now. So let me tell you how you're going to suffer. This is a very simple one. This is something that everybody participates in. Everyone goes to festivals, right? You go to your neighborhood fall festival, you go to the beer and wine festival, you go to the carnival. So DE&I programs are within those festivals. And let me explain how. So I've planned festivals for the last 11 years, and I've always wanted everyone to feel like they were included and that they could have fun and that there was something there for them. So at one of the cities that I worked for, I planned about 75 festivals a year for them. And one thing that I always had was food trucks. Food trucks are expensive if you've ever been to them. They cost, like, if you have a family of 4, you could easily spend $85, $90. So here's an example of equity and inclusion, okay? I want to know what I always had so every single family could feel included. I always had at least one cart, like a hot dog cart, that was like $5 for hot dog, chips, and a drink. That way, for a family of 4, that is $20. Your kids can feel like they are participating, like the rest of the neighborhood kids, and they can feel like, my parents don't have to pack a lunch and bring it here. Like we can still experience this and give our kids like a fun movie night. Maybe we're showing Harry Potter on the screen, and now they can have their hot dog, chips, and a drink and sit in front of the movie. That way, everyone is included. Okay. Another example of inclusion is for these 75 festivals that I was doing for this one city, having different music every single week. So one week it might be a DJ, the next week it might be a country artist, the next week it might be a rock band, then a pop band, then a hip hop, whatever. Always. That way everyone always felt like, hey, maybe this week I wasn't a fan of the genre of music, but I know that I can come back next week for Food Truck Fridays and there's something here for me. Another example is making sure the event is accessible. So if I have vendors set up on the sidewalk, how is a wheelchair going to get through? How is someone on crutches going to get through? How is someone on a walker going to get through? Are they going to trip over that tent? If there's no DE&I programs, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about someone that's disabled. I don't have to worry about someone who doesn't have as much money as me. I don't have to worry about someone who has a different diet as me or who is gluten-free. These are the things you're going to be missing out on because now we don't have to think about it if we don't want to. I'm an empathetic person and I'm going to keep doing it, but a lot of people are going to be like, ooh, check that off the list. It's going to make my job so much fucking easier. And I've done a lot of other things. Like I had the first Pride event in Gwinnett County to the point where then the county had their own Pride event. And I got hate mail for that. People were saying that they were going to kill me and I was going to go to jail or I was going to go to hell. And that's just a silly little example of DE&I programs, but there are so many programs that are implemented into the workplace and into just like your everyday life that you don't even realize.
What's a DEI job?
They think the DEI means black. Like they have put in their minds that it means that there's 2 people who are applying for a job. This person's going to get it because they're black. When in actuality, DEI is inclusive of everyone. I worked for one of the highest profiting companies in the world, and their DEI initiatives made it so that veterans had support groups. They made it so that new mothers were able to breastfeed in mothering rooms throughout the day, or people who of different religions were able to have meditation rooms where they could have prayer. So it's like making an inclusive workplace for everyone, prioritizing the fact that not everybody's the same. And they think that it means black. And it's like a moving of the goalpost. In their mind, there is no world where a black person would be more qualified, that there's always going to be an infinitely more qualified white person. It doesn't matter if the black person went to school for years. They got it because they're black and not because they worked for it, which is wild. Which is wild when you think about it. Like you're essentially saying there's no way that I'm not the best. Even if I didn't work for it or I didn't go to school, there's no way that I'm not the best.
So DEI doesn't stand for black?
It doesn't, but they think
that's not what the acronym is.
They think that that's actually what it means. Like if you asked someone, they would...
So, what are your thoughts? Are you happy that DEI is being rolled back across the government and in various companies? Or do you feel differently? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for listening. See you soon.